bear cub was swept toward a waterfall in a raging river. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun filtered through the tall pine trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Lila Harper adjusted her baby carrier, feeling her 6-month-old son Noah squirm against her chest. Her husband, Finn, walked a few steps ahead, consulting the trail map as they made their way through Evergreen National Park. The campsite should be just ahead, Finn called over his shoulder. Right by the river, just like the ranger said. Perfect spot. Lila smiled, breathing in the fresh mountain air. They had planned this camping trip for months. Their first family adventure since Noah was born. The baby had been surprisingly content during their hike, his bright blue eyes taking in the lush greenery and occasional wildlife with quiet wonder. "I think he's going to love it here," Lila said, gently stroking Noah's chubby cheek. A little nature baby in the making. As they rounded a bend in the trail, the trees thinned, revealing a picturesque clearing beside a wide, rushing river. The water sparkled in the sunlight, flowing steadily toward what sounded like a distant roar. "That must be Mason Falls up ahead," Finn remarked, setting down his heavy backpack. The ranger mentioned it was about half a mile downstream from our campsite. They began setting up their tent, working together with practiced efficiency. Noah watched from his playmat, occasionally batting at the colorful toys hanging from his portable activity arch. The camping spot was perfect. Level ground, shade from towering trees, and close enough to the river to enjoy its cooling presence without being too near its powerful current. What they didn't know was that on the opposite bank, hidden by dense underbrush, another family was going about their day. A mother black bear, whom local rangers had named Sierra, carefully watched her young cub, Coda, as he explored their surroundings. It was Coda's first spring, and everything fascinated him. Butterflies, fallen logs, the shimmer of water at the river's edge. Sierra was an experienced mother, having raised 2 sets of cubs before Coda. She kept a watchful eye on him while digging for grubs under rotting logs. The river was running high this spring after heavy snowmelt from the mountains, making its usual gentle flow more treacherous. Sierra knew to keep her distance, occasionally huffing soft warnings to her curious cub when he ventured too close to the water's edge. Back at the campsite, Lila had just finished feeding Noah when she decided to take him for a walk along the safer parts of the riverbank. Finn was busy gathering firewood for the evening. "We won't go far," she promised, securing Noah in his carrier. "Just a little exploration before dinner." The afternoon sun was warm on their backs as they strolled along the pebbled shore. Noah babbled happily, reaching out toward the rushing water, entranced by its movement. Lila kept a safe distance from the edge, pointing out colorful stones and the occasional fish visible in the clearer shallows. "See the water, Noah? Isn't it beautiful?" she cooed, crouching down to let him touch a smooth stone she had picked up. "Someday, when you're bigger, Daddy will teach you how to skip stones just like this one." Meanwhile, across the river, young Coda had grown bolder. While Sierra was distracted by a particularly rich food source, the cub had wandered dangerously close to the river. A vibrant butterfly with electric blue wings caught his attention, leading him to the very edge where the earth crumbled slightly beneath his small paws. The moment happened so quickly. The butterfly landed on a branch extending over the water. Coda, driven by irresistible curiosity, stretched his body to reach it. The wet earth gave way beneath him, and with a surprised yelp, he tumbled into the cold, rushing water. The current immediately seized him, pulling his small body away from the shore. His panicked cries cut through the air as he thrashed wildly, trying to keep his head above water. Sierra's head snapped up at the sound of her cub's distress. With a deep, anguished roar, she ran to the river's edge, pacing frantically as she watched her baby being carried downstream toward the thundering falls. Across the river, the commotion caught Lila's attention. She froze, eyes widening as she spotted the small bear cub struggling in the powerful current. Her heart clenched with instinctive empathy. "Oh no," she whispered, unconsciously clutching Noah closer. Oh, the poor thing. Noah, sensing his mother's sudden tension, turned his head toward the river. His eyes fixed on the struggling cub, and something in his expression changed. His usual cheerful babbling stopped, replaced by an intent focus that seemed far beyond his few months of life. In that moment, as the mother bear roared in desperation and the cub's strength began to fade, no one could have predicted what would happen next, or how a human baby, barely able to sit up unassisted, would somehow alter the course of this unfolding tragedy. The cub's head disappeared beneath the water for a terrifying moment before bobbing back up, his little muzzle gasping for air as the roar of the falls grew louder. Time seemed to slow as Lila watched in helpless horror, knowing there was nothing she could do without endangering herself and Noah. But sometimes the most extraordinary moments come from the most unexpected sources, and what Noah did next would leave everyone breathless. Noah's tiny body suddenly tensed in the carrier. His eyes, usually soft with infant wonder, narrowed with an intensity that startled Lila. Before she could react, Noah let out a piercing wail. Not his usual cry of hunger or discomfort, but something altogether different. The sound echoed across the water, cutting through the roar of the river with surprising clarity. "Noah, sweetie, what's wrong?" Lila whispered, bouncing him gently. But Noah continued, his cries growing more insistent. His small arms flailed, and he twisted in his carrier with unexpected strength. One of his hands grabbed at the colorful plastic keys hanging from the carrier's strap, a toy that played music when shaken. Lila was so focused on calming Noah that she didn't immediately notice the change across the river. Sierra, the mother bear, had paused in her frantic pacing, her head tilted as if listening to Noah's cries. For a brief moment, the eyes of the bear and the human mother met across the rushing water, sharing an unspoken understanding that transcended species. Then something even more unexpected happened. Noah managed to grasp the plastic keys, and with a strength that seemed impossible for his age, yanked them free from the carrier. Before Lila could stop him, he threw the brightly colored toy toward the river with surprising accuracy. The keys landed in the water with a splash, just a few feet ahead of where Coda was struggling. "Noah!" Lila gasped, stunned by her baby's action. The musical toy hit the water, automatically activating its cheerful tune. The bright colors and sounds captured Coda's attention immediately. The cub, running purely on survival instinct, paddled toward the floating toy. His small paws batted at it, and miraculously the toy's elongated shape provided just enough buoyancy for him to grasp onto. Finn, having heard Noah's unusual cries, came running from the campsite. "Lila, what's happening?" he called, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. His wife and child by the riverbank, a bear cub struggling in the water, and a frantic mother bear on the opposite shore. "It's Noah," Lila said, her voice trembling with disbelief. He threw his keys to the bear cub. I think he's trying to help it." Finn stared at his son in amazement before quickly assessing the situation. "The cub's still heading toward the falls, but it's staying afloat better now," he observed. "But there's nothing else we can do. It's too dangerous to try to help more directly." Meanwhile, Sierra had spotted her cub clinging to the strange floating object. With a decisive grunt, she plunged into the river upstream, her powerful body fighting against the current as she swam on an intercept course with her baby. What happened next occurred so quickly that Lila and Finn would later struggle to describe it to the park rangers. Sierra reached her cub just as they were approaching a bend in the river. The musical toy, still clutched in Coda's paws, kept him buoyant enough for his mother to grab him by the scruff. With powerful strokes, she angled toward a fallen tree that extended part way into the river. But the current was too strong. As they neared the tree, Sierra was pushed away, still clutching her cub. They were swept around the bend, the roar of the falls growing louder. "No," Lila whispered, tears filling her eyes. Noah had gone quiet, his gaze still fixed on the river where the bears had disappeared. Just then, a newcomer burst through the trees on their side of the river. A woman in her early 30s with a park ranger uniform and a determined expression sprinted past them. "Stay here," she called over her shoulder. "I radioed for backup." The ranger, whose name badge identified her as Ranger Maya Rivera, ran downstream along a narrow trail that Lila and Finn hadn't noticed before. Maya moved with the confidence of someone who knew these woods intimately, occasionally glancing at the river as she ran. "We should head back to camp," Finn said gently, placing his hand on Lila's shoulder. "There's nothing more we can do, and it's not safe to have Noah this close to the water." Lila nodded reluctantly, but as they turned to leave, Noah began to cry again, the same insistent wail as before. He twisted in his carrier, reaching toward the river path where the ranger had disappeared. "He wants to see what happens," Lila realized aloud. "I know it sounds crazy, but I think he's worried about the cub." Finn hesitated, torn between safety concerns and the strange connection their son seemed to have formed with the bear cub's plight. "Let's follow the trail a little way," he finally conceded. "But we stay well back from the water, and at the first sign of danger we turn around immediately." They followed the path cautiously, Finn taking the lead while Lila held Noah close, whispering reassurances. The trail wound through the trees, occasionally offering glimpses of the river rushing by below them. The roar of the falls grew louder as they approached. After walking for several minutes, the trees opened up to reveal a breathtaking view. Mason Falls cascaded down a series of rocky ledges about 50 feet high, creating a thundering curtain of white water that plunged into a wide pool below. A sturdy wooden observation platform extended from their side of the riverbank, providing a safe vantage point. But it wasn't the waterfall that captured their attention. It was the scene unfolding at the pool's edge. Ranger Maya had reached the bottom of the falls and was wading into the shallows, a rescue rope slung across her body. About 20 yards away, Sierra had somehow managed to reach a small rocky outcropping, just before the top of the falls. She clung there with her cub, both of them exhausted, but alive. The musical keys, still clutched in Coda's paw, glinted in the afternoon sun. 2 more rangers had arrived from another direction and were carefully setting up a rescue operation, unfolding what looked like a specialized animal transport cage and preparing tranquilizer equipment. "They're going to try to save them," Finn said, his voice filled with cautious hope. As they watched from the safety of the observation deck, Noah quieted again, his eyes fixed on the bears with that same unusual intensity. Lila felt a strange prickling at the back of her neck, a sense that there was something more happening here than she could understand. The rescue attempt was precarious. Sierra, though exhausted, was still a wild animal, a mother protecting her cub. She growled warnings at the approaching rangers, her protective instincts overriding everything else. "They need to be careful," Finn murmured. "If they frighten her too much, she might bolt and go over the falls anyway." Just then, a new sound joined the chorus of rushing water and human voices. From somewhere in the forest came the deep, rumbling call of another bear. Sierra's head snapped up, her attention momentarily diverted. "There's another bear," Lila whispered, instinctively holding Noah tighter. As if in answer, a large male bear emerged from the trees on the far side of the pool. He was massive, with a distinctive white patch on his chest. "That's Thunder," came a voice from behind them. Lila and Finn turned to find an older ranger approaching the observation deck. His weathered face creased with concern as he watched the unfolding scene. "He's the dominant male in this part of the park. Sierra is his mate from 2 seasons ago." "Will he help them?" Finn asked. The older ranger, whose name tag read Chief Ranger Wilson, shook his head. "Male bears don't typically involve themselves with cubs, even their own. In fact, they can be a danger to them. My team needs to move fast now." But something unusual was happening. Thunder paced along the shore, watching Sierra and their cub with what almost looked like concern. He let out another rumbling call, and to everyone's surprise, Sierra responded with a softer huffing sound. "I've never seen anything like this," Chief Ranger Wilson murmured. "In 20 years working these woods." Noah suddenly squirmed in his carrier, letting out a happy gurgle that contrasted sharply with his earlier cries. He reached his hands out toward the bears, babbling as if trying to tell them something. And then, in a move that defied all natural expectations, Thunder waded into the pool. With powerful strokes, he swam toward the rocky outcropping where Sierra and Coda were stranded. The rangers froze, uncertain how to proceed with this new development. "Is he going to attack them?" Lila asked fearfully. "I don't know," the chief ranger admitted. "This is completely unprecedented behavior." When Thunder reached the outcropping, he didn't attack. Instead, he positioned himself below Sierra and their cub, his massive body creating a living platform. Sierra, after a moment's hesitation, carefully climbed onto his broad back, still clutching Coda by the scruff. Together, the bear family began to make their way toward the shore, away from the falls. The human onlookers watched in stunned silence. No one had ever documented such coordinated behavior between adult bears in a rescue situation. It defied everything known about bear social structures. "It's as if they understood the danger," Ranger Maya said as she waded back to shore, her rescue mission now unnecessary. "As if they knew they needed to work together." Noah clapped his tiny hands together, his face alight with joy. Lila and Finn exchanged bewildered glances, both thinking the same impossible thought. Had their son somehow communicated with these wild creatures? Had his cries, his thrown toy, somehow catalyzed this chain of extraordinary events? As the bear family reached the shore safely, Coda still clutching the musical keys that had kept him afloat, Noah yawned and nestled against Lila's chest, suddenly as peaceful as if nothing unusual had happened. "I've got to document this," Chief Ranger Wilson said, pulling out his camera. "No one's going to believe it otherwise." But something told Lila that there was more to this story than would ever be captured on film. A connection between species that science couldn't fully explain, bridged by the innocent actions of her baby boy. What none of them realized was that this remarkable day was only the beginning. The bond formed between Noah and the bears would continue to reveal itself in ways that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the natural world, and about the special gifts that Noah possessed. Back at their campsite that evening, Lila and Finn sat beside their tent, speaking in hushed tones as Noah slept peacefully nearby. The events of the day had left them shaken and filled with questions neither could answer. "What do you think happened out there?" Finn asked, stirring the campfire embers with a stick. The orange glow illuminated his troubled expression. "The way Noah reacted, it wasn't normal, Lila." Lila wrapped her arms around herself, glancing at their sleeping baby. I know. It was like he understood what was happening, like he knew exactly what to do to help that bear cub. She paused, struggling to put her feelings into words. Do you remember my grandmother's stories? Finn looked up, his brow furrowing. Your grandmother? The one from the Blackfoot tribe? Yes. She used to tell me stories about children born with special connections to the natural world. Children who could understand the language of animals, who could sense their needs and feelings. Lila ran a hand through her hair, looking embarrassed. I always thought they were just stories, beautiful myths to explain the harmony between humans and nature. But today, when Noah threw his toy to save that cub, you think our son has some kind of gift? Finn's voice was skeptical but not dismissive. He had seen too much that day to easily discount anything. I don't know, Lila admitted. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe babies are more intuitive than we give them credit for. But it felt like more than that, Finn. The way he looked at those bears, the way he insisted on following them. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Ranger Maya appeared at the edge of their campsite, her uniform still damp from her earlier rescue attempt. Mind if I join you? She asked. I wanted to check in after everything that happened today. Please, Lila gestured to a camp chair. We were just talking about it, actually. Maya sat down, accepting the cup of coffee Finn offered. I've been a ranger here for 8 years, and I've never seen anything like what happened today. She took a sip of coffee before continuing. Chief Wilson is beside himself with excitement. He's already been on the phone with wildlife biologists from the university. How are the bears? Lila asked. They're fine. We tracked them to a safe distance, then left them alone. Sierra and Coda seem no worse for wear after their ordeal. Maya hesitated, then added, Thunder's behavior is what's really got everyone talking. Male bears simply don't act that way, especially not with cubs they haven't seen for 2 seasons. It defies all known behavioral patterns. Finn exchanged a glance with Lila before asking, And what about the toy? The musical keys that Noah threw? Maya laughed softly. Coda wouldn't let go of them. We couldn't risk trying to take them away, not with 2 protective parents right there. So there's now a bear cub somewhere in these woods with a set of plastic musical keys as his new favorite toy. Noah stirred in his sleep, making small, contented noises. Maya's gaze drifted to him, her expression curious. Your baby, there was something unusual about the way he reacted today. Almost as if, she trailed off, shaking her head. I'm sorry, that's silly. As if he knew what was happening? Lila finished for her. As if he was trying to help? Maya looked relieved that she hadn't offended them. Exactly. I know it sounds crazy, but in this job, you learn to trust your instincts. And my instincts tell me there was something special about the way your son responded to that situation. Before either Lila or Finn could respond, a low, rumbling sound came from the woods beyond their campsite. All 3 adults froze, instantly recognizing the sound of a bear. Stay calm, Maya whispered, slowly rising from her chair. I don't think they'd approach a campsite with a fire burning, but let me check. She pulled a powerful flashlight from her belt and directed its beam toward the trees. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, at the very edge of the light's reach, 2 reflective eyes appeared. They blinked once, then vanished back into the darkness. Was that? Finn began. Sierra, Maya confirmed, her voice hushed with wonder. She's never been known to approach human campsites before. The ranger turned to look at Noah, who had awakened and was now sitting up in his portable crib, alert but strangely calm. It's almost as if she came to check on him. Lila moved to pick up Noah, but paused when she saw him staring intently at the spot where the bear had been. His little hand raised, fingers opening and closing as if waving goodbye. "I think I should report this," Maya said slowly. "Bears approaching campsites, even without aggression, is significant." She hesitated, then added, "Would you mind if I brought Dr. Elijah Chen to meet you tomorrow? He's a wildlife behaviorist who's been studying our bear population for years. He might have some insights into what happened today." After Maya left, Lila and Finn moved their sleeping arrangements into the center of the tent, with Noah's portable crib between them. Though the ranger had assured them there was likely no danger, they couldn't help feeling unsettled by Sierra's visit. "Do you think we should leave in the morning?" Finn whispered in the darkness. "We could find another campground, somewhere without bears." Lila was quiet for a long moment, listening to Noah's steady breathing. "No," she finally said. "I think we need to understand what happened today. Meeting with this doctor, Chen, might help. And if he tells us our son has some mystical connection to bears—" Finn's attempt at humor fell flat in the darkness. "Then we'll deal with it," Lila replied simply. "Whatever it is, Noah is still our son." In his sleep, Noah smiled, as if dreaming of his new friends in the forest. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Noah was unusually cheerful, babbling and laughing as Layla fed him breakfast. Finn had just started making coffee when they heard vehicles approaching. Maya arrived first, followed by a rugged-looking SUV. From it emerged a tall man with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a well-worn leather satchel and moved with the deliberate grace of someone comfortable in the wilderness. "Mr. and Mrs. Harper, I'm Dr. Elijah Chen." His handshake was firm, his smile genuine. "Ranger Rivera told me about yesterday's extraordinary events. I hope you don't mind my early visit." "Not at all," Lila said, gesturing to their camp chairs. "We're hoping you might help us make sense of what happened." Dr. Chen sat down, politely declining Finn's offer of coffee. His attention immediately went to Noah, who was watching him with bright, curious eyes. "This is the little fellow who saved our bear cub?" he asked, his voice softening. "May I?" At Lila's nod, Dr. Chen crouched down next to Noah's portable seat. He didn't attempt to touch the baby, instead simply observing him with professional interest. "Hello, Noah," he said gently. "I've heard you're quite the wildlife rescuer." Noah gurgled happily in response, reaching out toward the doctor's glasses with chubby fingers. "He seems remarkably calm and focused for his age," Dr. Chen noted, straightening up. "How old is he?" 6 months next week, Finn answered. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully before turning to Maya. "And you're certain about what you saw?" "The male bear, Thunder, actually helped rescue the female and cub." "Absolutely certain," Maya confirmed. "We have photos, though they're a bit distant. Chief Wilson is trying to get the university to send a drone team to help us track the family today." "Fascinating," Dr. Chen murmured. He opened his satchel and pulled out a tablet, quickly bringing up some files. "I've been studying this particular bear family for 3 years now. Sierra is an excellent mother, very protective and careful with her cubs. This incident with Coda falling into the river is highly unusual for her." He glanced at Noah again. "Almost as unusual as your son's apparent intervention." "Do you think it was just coincidence?" Finn asked, voicing the question that had kept both parents awake for much of the night. "Noah throwing his toy right where the cub could reach it?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, considering his response. "In my 20 years studying wildlife behavior, I've learned to be cautious about attributing human motivations to animals, or extraordinary abilities to humans. He looked directly at Lila and Finn. But I've also witnessed phenomena that defy conventional scientific explanation. Indigenous cultures around the world speak of special connections between certain individuals and the natural world. Lila leaned forward. My grandmother was Blackfoot. She used to tell stories about children born with the ability to communicate with animals. Many traditional knowledge systems include similar concepts, Dr. Chen acknowledged. The scientific community has typically dismissed such ideas, but there's growing recognition that indigenous wisdom often contains profound truths that Western science is only beginning to understand. Noah suddenly let out a delighted squeal, so unexpected that all the adults jumped. He was pointing excitedly toward the trees behind Dr. Chen. When they turned to look, they saw nothing. But seconds later, a rustling sound confirmed they weren't alone. From the underbrush emerged Coda, the bear cub from yesterday. Around his neck, caught like a bizarre collar, were Noah's musical keys. The toy occasionally emitted faint tinkling sounds as the cub moved. "Don't move," Maya whispered, her hand going instinctively to the bear spray on her belt. Where there's a cub, the mother's usually close by. As if on cue, Sierra appeared a few yards behind her cub, but instead of charging or showing signs of aggression, she simply watched from a distance as Coda took a few tentative steps into the clearing. Dr. Chen slowly raised his tablet and began recording. "This is unprecedented," he breathed. "Bears, especially mothers with cubs, typically avoid human campsites entirely." Noah babbled excitedly, straining against the straps of his seat as if trying to get closer to the bear cub. Coda seemed equally curious about Noah, taking another cautious step forward. "Finn," Lila whispered urgently. "Get Noah inside the tent." But before Finn could move, another figure emerged from the trees. Thunder, the male bear, padded silently into view. Instead of approaching the campsite, he stopped beside Sierra, his massive presence both intimidating and strangely reassuring. He wasn't behaving aggressively, merely watchful. "A family unit," Dr. Chen murmured in astonishment. "Adult male, female, and cub traveling together. This simply doesn't happen with black bears." Noah had gone suddenly quiet. His intense focus on the bears was matched by their apparent interest in him. For a long, suspended moment, it was as if an invisible conversation was taking place, one that none of the adults, human or bear, could quite comprehend. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the bears retreated. Coda was the last to leave, giving one final look at Noah before scampering after his parents, the musical keys jingling around his neck. The clearing was silent after they disappeared, the only sound the gentle crackling of the morning campfire. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, processing what they had just witnessed. Dr. Chen was the first to speak. "In 20 years of wildlife research, I've never seen anything like that. A male bear traveling with and apparently protecting a female and cub that may or may not be his offspring, approaching a human campsite without aggression. It defies everything we know about bear behavior." "And what about Noah?" Lila asked quietly. "What do you make of his reaction? Of the bear's interest in him?" The scientist carefully set down his tablet. "I'm a man of science, Mrs. Harper. I believe in observable facts and testable hypotheses, but I also believe there are aspects of the natural world that science has yet to fully explain." He looked at Noah with undisguised wonder. "Your son may have one of those connections that transcends our current understanding. The way the bears responded to him, particularly after he saved the cub, it suggests a level of communication or recognition that I cannot explain through conventional biology." Maya, who had been silent during the bear's visit, finally spoke. "So, what do we do now?" This isn't just an interesting scientific observation. It's a safety issue. If these bears are going to keep approaching Noah, I'd like to conduct some controlled observations, Dr. Chen said. "With your permission, of course," he added quickly, looking at Lila and Finn. "Nothing that would put Noah at risk, but perhaps we could set up cameras around your campsite. See if the bears return, document their behavior." Finn looked uncertain. "Is it safe to stay here? With bears deliberately approaching our camp?" "These particular bears haven't shown any aggression," Dr. Chen pointed out. "Quite the opposite, they seem almost protective. But I understand your concern. We could move your campsite to our research station about a mile from here. It has proper facilities and security, while still being within the bear's territory." Lila and Finn exchanged a long look, having one of those silent conversations that parents perfect early in their child's life. "We'll stay," Lila finally decided. "At your research station, I think we need to understand what's happening with Noah and these bears." Dr. Chen nodded, respect evident in his expression. Not every parent would be so open-minded. Many would be headed for the nearest hotel by now. "We've always believed there's more to this world than what can be easily explained," Finn said, putting his arm around Lila. "And if our son has some special connection to nature, we want to understand it, not run from it." As they began packing up their campsite, preparing to move to the research station, Lila noticed Noah watching the trees where the bears had disappeared. His expression was peaceful, content, as if he understood something the rest of them were still struggling to grasp. Little did they know that what had begun as a simple family camping trip was about to become an extraordinary journey of discovery. The connection between Noah and the bears would not only challenge scientific understanding, but would ultimately lead to a revelation that would change their lives forever, and possibly the future of human-animal relationships in ways no one could have imagined. The research station was more comfortable than Lila had expected. Nestled in a small clearing and surrounded by thick forest, the wooden structure resembled a rustic cabin more than a scientific facility. Solar panels gleamed on the slanted roof, and a small satellite dish provided the only obvious hint of modern technology. "We try to maintain a minimal footprint, Doctor," Chen explained as he helped them unload their gear from Maya's park service vehicle. "The less we disrupt the natural environment, the more authentic our observations." Inside, the station was simple but well equipped. A main room served as both laboratory and living space, with scientific equipment sharing space with comfortable furniture. A small kitchen occupied one corner, and 2 private bedrooms branched off from the main area. "You and your family can take the east bedroom," Dr. Chen said, showing them to a cozy room with a queen-sized bed and a space clearly prepared for Noah's portable crib. "I'll use the other room when I stay overnight, which isn't often. Usually, it's just our research assistants monitoring the equipment." As if on cue, the door opened, and a young woman entered carrying an armload of groceries. She had copper-red hair pulled back in a practical braid, freckles scattered across her nose, and an expression of barely contained excitement. "Dr. Chen, I got your message. Is it true? A human baby communicating with bears?" She stopped abruptly when she noticed Lila and Finn. "Oh, you must be the Harpers. I'm Zoe Fanning, graduate assistant extraordinaire and chief coffee maker." She set down the groceries and extended her hand, her smile warm and genuine. Dr. Chen chuckled. "Zoe is being modest. She's actually one of the most promising wildlife behavior specialists I've ever mentored. She's working on her doctoral thesis about interspecies communication. Talk about perfect timing, Zoe said, crouching down to Noah's level. Hi there, little bear whisperer. We're going to be great friends. I can tell. Noah regarded her solemnly for a moment before breaking into a wide, gummy smile. Zoe laughed delightedly. Oh, he's adorable. How old is he? Almost 6 months, Lila replied, feeling herself warming to the enthusiastic young woman. Perfect age for imprinting behaviors, Zoe remarked, straightening up. Old enough to recognize patterns and form attachments. Young enough that his understanding of normal interpersonal boundaries is still developing. She caught herself and looked embarrassed. Sorry, occupational hazard. I tend to analyze everything. No need to apologize, Finn said. That's actually helpful context. We're still trying to make sense of what happened yesterday. Dr. Chen began setting up monitoring equipment while Zoe helped the Harpers settle in. She explained the safety features of the research station, reinforced doors and windows, bear deterrents that could be activated if necessary, and a direct radio link to the ranger station. Not that I think you'll need any of this, she added, showing them the emergency protocols. From what Dr. Chen described, these bears seem to have formed some kind of positive association with your family, particularly Noah. Is that even possible? Lila asked, unpacking Noah's things. Bears forming positive associations with specific humans? Zoe considered the question thoughtfully. There are documented cases of wild animals recognizing and responding differently to individual humans, usually in contexts where there's been regular contact over time. But what you've described, a spontaneous connection based on a single rescue event, that's much rarer. She glanced at Noah, who was contentedly playing with blocks on a blanket. And the fact that it centers around an infant makes it even more unusual. By evening, the research station had been transformed into a monitoring hub. Cameras surveilled the clearing around the cabin. Motion sensors were positioned at strategic points in the surrounding forest, and Dr. Chen had set up a sophisticated audio recording system designed to capture animal vocalizations. If Sierra and her family return, we'll document every aspect of the encounter, he explained over dinner. Movement patterns, vocalizations, proximity to humans, especially Noah. What exactly are you hoping to learn? Finn asked, helping himself to the surprisingly good stew Zoe had prepared. Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with his assistant before responding. Well, at a minimum, we're witnessing highly unusual bear behavior that deserves documentation. Male bears typically don't travel with females and cubs, nor do they approach human settlements without aggression or food motivation. But you think there's more to it than that, Lila prompted, sensing his hesitation. I think. Dr. Chen paused, carefully choosing his words. I think we may be observing a form of cross-species recognition or communication that science has not yet fully explored. Whether it's based on emotional signals, nonverbal cues, or something else entirely, that's what we hope to discover. After dinner, as Lila was getting Noah ready for bed, Zoe approached her with a small device that resembled a watch. We'd like Noah to wear this while he's here, she explained. It's a biometric monitor, completely safe and non-invasive. It tracks heart rate, skin temperature, and a few other physiological markers that might help us understand what happens when he interacts with the bears. Lila examined the device carefully. It won't hurt him? Not at all. My nephew wears one just like it for his sleep studies. It's specifically designed for infants. Zoe's expression grew more serious. I understand if you're hesitant. This whole situation must be overwhelming. Lila looked over at Noah, who was babbling happily as Finn made funny faces at him. It is overwhelming, she admitted. Yesterday morning, we were just a normal family on a camping trip. Now we're in a research station, wondering if our son has some kind of mystical connection to wild bears." She shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "If someone had told me this would happen, I'd have thought they were crazy." Zoe touched her arm gently. "For what it's worth, I think you're handling it amazingly well. Some parents would be fleeing in terror or demanding the bears be relocated. The fact that you're willing to stay and understand what's happening, it shows remarkable openness." "My grandmother would say we're being guided," Lila said softly. "That whatever is happening between Noah and these bears is meant to be discovered." She took the monitor from Zoe. "We'll try it. Anything that helps us understand this situation better is worth a shot." That night, as the forest around them settled into darkness, the research station was quiet except for the gentle hum of equipment. Lila and Finn had gone to bed early, exhausted by the day's events. Dr. Chen was reviewing footage from the park cameras, searching for earlier sightings of Sierra, Coda, and Thunder. Zoe remained in the main room, monitoring the sensors and occasionally checking the biometric data from Noah's wristband. Just after midnight, a soft chime alerted her to movement outside. Zoe quickly switched to the external camera feeds, expecting to see deer or perhaps raccoons investigating the perimeter. Instead, she found herself looking at Sierra, Thunder, and Coda. The bear family had returned, moving with surprising stealth given their size. They weren't approaching the cabin directly, but seemed to be establishing a perimeter around it, with Thunder taking up a position that gave him a clear view of both the forest and the building. "Dr. Chen," Zoe called softly, not wanting to wake the Harpers. "They're back." The scientist joined her at the monitors, his expression a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Remarkable. They're positioning themselves almost like guards." "It looks like Thunder is taking the primary watch point," Zoe noted, pointing to the largest bear's strategic position. "Sierra and Coda are staying closer to the eastern side of the cabin, right outside the Harper's bedroom window." Dr. Chen checked another monitor, this one displaying Noah's biometric data. "Look at this. His heart rate just increased slightly and he's transitioning from deep to lighter sleep. It's almost as if he senses their presence." "Should we wake the parents?" Zoe asked. "After a moment's consideration, Doctor." Chen shook his head. "Let's observe first. The bears aren't showing any aggression, and the Harpers need their rest after everything they've been through." For the next hour, they watched as the bears maintained their positions. Occasionally, Coda would approach the cabin, sniffing curiously at the foundation before Sierra gently herded him back. Thunder remained vigilant, his massive head turning at each new forest sound. "It's like they're protecting them," Zoe whispered, the implications of what they were witnessing beginning to sink in. "The bears are acting as if the Harpers, or at least Noah, are part of their family unit." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I've studied bears for 20 years, and I've never seen behavior remotely like this. It defies everything we know about bear social structures and interspecies relationships." Just as he finished speaking, a new sound caught their attention. A low growl from Thunder, followed by Sierra gathering Coda close to her. The bears' postures had changed, tension evident in their bodies. "Something's wrong," Zoe said, quickly checking the other camera feeds. "There, at the edge of the clearing." The infrared camera picked up the heat signature of another large animal moving through the underbrush. As it emerged into the moonlight, they could see it was another bear, an adult male, larger than Thunder, and with a distinctive scar across his muzzle. "That's Scarface." Dr. Chen identified him immediately. He's been challenging Thunder for territory for the past 2 seasons, extremely aggressive and dangerous. They watched with growing concern as Scarface approached, his body language unmistakably threatening. Thunder moved to intercept him, positioning himself between the newcomer and the cabin. Sierra and Coda retreated closer to the building. "Should we activate the deterrents?" Zoe asked, her hand hovering over the control panel. "Not yet," Dr. Chen decided. "Let's see how this plays out. Activating the system might agitate all the bears and make the situation worse." The confrontation between the 2 male bears escalated quickly. Thunder's warning growls grew louder, while Scarface responded with aggressive posturing. As the standoff intensified, Sierra grew increasingly agitated, huffing and pacing near the cabin wall. Inside, unknown to the researchers, Noah had awakened. His eyes were open in the darkness, his small body completely still, as he listened to the bear vocalizations outside. The biometric monitor showed his heart rate increasing, but not from fear. His brain activity pattern suggested intense focus. Suddenly, from within the Harper's bedroom came the sound of Noah crying. Not his usual cry for food or comfort, but the same distinctive wail he had made at the river. It cut through the night, causing all 4 bears outside to freeze. Lila and Finn startled awake, disoriented in the unfamiliar room. "Noah? What's wrong, sweetie?" Lila murmured, reaching for her son in the portable crib beside their bed. But Noah's cry had already done something extraordinary. Outside, Scarface had taken several steps back, his aggressive posture faltering. Thunder seized the opportunity, advancing with renewed confidence. Within moments, the intruder had retreated back into the forest, leaving Thunder standing victorious in the clearing. Dr. Chen and Zoe stared at the monitors in astonishment. "Did that just happen?" Zoe whispered. "Did Noah's cry just help Thunder drive off a challenger?" Before Dr. Chen could respond, the door to the Harper's bedroom opened, and Finn emerged with Noah in his arms. The baby had stopped crying and was now alert, looking around the dimly lit room with clear interest. "What's going on?" Finn asked, noticing the researchers' intense focus on the monitors. "Is everything okay?" "Your son just became part of a bear dominance dispute," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with wonder. "And I think he may have just influenced the outcome." Finn approached the monitors, his eyes widening as he saw the bears outside. "They came back? And there was a fight?" Dr. Chen quickly explained what they had witnessed. As he spoke, Lila joined them, wrapping a robe around herself. "You're saying Noah sensed the danger and what? Called out to help Thunder?" She looked incredulous, despite everything they had already experienced. "I'm saying we observed a series of events that defy conventional explanation," Dr. Chen replied carefully. Noah woke and vocalized at precisely the moment Thunder was being challenged. That vocalization appeared to startle or distract the challenger, giving Thunder an advantage. "Correlation doesn't equal causation," Zoe added, her scientific training asserting itself despite her excitement. But the timing was remarkable. Noah, now fully awake, was squirming in Finn's arms, pointing insistently toward the window. "I think he wants to see them," Finn said, looking uncertain. "Is it safe?" Dr. Chen checked the monitors again. Scarface was long gone, and the 3 bears had resumed their positions around the cabin. "I believe it is. They've shown no aggression toward humans, quite the opposite. But let's use the observation window. It's reinforced glass just to be safe." They moved to a specially designed window at the side of the cabin, a one-way viewing panel that allowed researchers to observe wildlife without being seen. When Finn positioned Noah in front of it, the baby immediately pressed his hands against the glass, his expression one of unmistakable recognition. Outside, Sierra and Coda approached the window, as if drawn by an invisible force. The mother bear lifted her nose, sniffing the air, while Coda, still wearing the musical keys around his neck, rose on his hind legs to peek toward the cabin. Though they couldn't possibly see through the one-way glass, both bears seemed to know exactly where Noah was positioned. "This is incredible," Zoe breathed, recording everything with a handheld camera. "It's like they're aware of his exact location." Noah made a soft cooing sound, his fingers splayed against the glass. To everyone's amazement, Coda mimicked the gesture, placing his paw against the window in almost the same position as Noah's hand. "Oh my God," Lila whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "They are communicating." Dr. Chen looked from the bears to Noah and back again, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. "In all my years of research, I've never seen anything like this. It's as if they recognize each other on some fundamental level." "But how is this possible?" Finn asked, his arm protectively around Lila's shoulders. "Noah's just a baby. He's never been around bears before yesterday. There are aspects of animal-human relationships that science is only beginning to understand," Dr. Chen said slowly. "Some researchers have proposed that human infants, before they fully acquire language, may retain a more instinctual form of communication, one that certain animals might recognize or respond to." Zoe was checking Noah's biometric data on a tablet. "His patterns are fascinating. When he's focused on the bears, his brain activity shows similarities to what we see in deep meditative states or during certain types of nonverbal communication." She looked up at Lila and Finn. "Has Noah shown any unusual connections to other animals before?" Lila thought for a moment. "He's always been very responsive to our neighbor's dog, and there was a time at my sister's farm when all the horses gathered at the fence when I walked by with him." She shook her head, "But I just thought that was normal baby stuff." "Perhaps it started as normal baby stuff," Dr. Chen suggested. "But what we're seeing here goes beyond typical animal-human interactions. The question is why these particular bears, and why such an intense connection?" Outside, Thunder had joined Sierra and Coda at the window. The three bears stood together, a unified family examining the cabin as if they could see the humans inside. Noah watched them with equal intensity, his usual baby fidgeting completely absent. "Do you think... Is it possible that Noah somehow understands them?" Finn asked, voicing the question that seemed both impossible and increasingly difficult to dismiss. Before anyone could answer, a new sound broke the midnight quiet, the rumble of approaching vehicles. Dr. Chen checked the perimeter cameras and frowned. "It's Chief Ranger Wilson, and he's not alone. There are 3 other vehicles. One looks like a news van." His expression grew concerned. "This was supposed to be a confidential research operation. I don't know how word got out." The bears heard the vehicles too. Thunder immediately moved into a protective position, while Sierra gathered Coda close. The bear family retreated toward the tree line but didn't leave completely, watching as the vehicles pulled into the clearing. "We need to go out there," Dr. Chen said, grabbing a jacket, "before Wilson says something to the press or, worse, decides these bears pose a threat." Zoe quickly gathered the biometric data they'd collected so far. "I'll back up everything we've recorded tonight. This is too important to risk losing." Lila looked torn between staying with Noah and finding out what was happening outside. Finn made the decision for her. "You stay with Noah," he said firmly. "I'll go with Dr. Chen and find out what's going on." Outside, Chief Ranger Wilson was attempting to manage a small but growing crowd. Besides the news van, there was a vehicle from the State Wildlife Department and another containing what appeared to be university officials. Dr. Chen, the chief ranger called as the scientist and Finn approached. I'm sorry about this. Someone at the station overheard our radio communications and leaked the story. By the time I found out, reporters were already on their way. A woman with a microphone and a cameraman in tow immediately approached them. Dr. Chen, is it true you've discovered a human child communicating with wild bears? How dangerous is this situation? Should the public be concerned? Dr. Chen raised his hands, trying to establish some order. This is a preliminary scientific observation, nothing more. We're documenting unusual but non-threatening behavior in a family of black bears. There is no danger to the public, and no reason for concern. Then why is a baby involved? A man in a wildlife department uniform demanded. This sounds like an extremely irresponsible research protocol. Finn stepped forward, his patience wearing thin. That research protocol is my son, and he's perfectly safe. We're working with Dr. Chen to understand an unusual event that happened naturally. No one put my child in danger. The wildlife officer looked skeptical. Sir, with all due respect, having a human infant anywhere near wild bears is inherently dangerous. As the state wildlife management officer, I have a responsibility to... He was interrupted by a commotion at the edge of the clearing. The bears, which had been watching from the tree line, were growing agitated by the increasing noise and vehicle lights. Thunder let out a warning huff, causing several of the newcomers to retreat hastily to their vehicles. See? This is exactly the problem, the wildlife officer said. These are wild animals and they're too close to human habitation. We need to tranquilize and relocate them immediately. Absolutely not, Dr. Chen said firmly. These bears have shown no aggression toward humans. In fact, they've displayed behavior that directly contradicts what we would expect from wild bears feeling threatened. Forcing them to relocate could disrupt an unprecedented research opportunity. The argument might have continued, but at that moment, the door to the research station opened. Lila stood there with Noah in her arms, the baby unusually alert for the late hour. As soon as Noah appeared, the bears' demeanor changed. Their agitation subsided, replaced by the same focused attention they had shown earlier. The reporters and wildlife officials fell silent, witnessing firsthand the extraordinary connection. Noah's presence seemed to calm the entire situation, bears and humans alike. Dr. Chen seized the opportunity. Chief Ranger, I suggest we establish a controlled perimeter around this research station. No unauthorized personnel, no additional vehicles, no disruptions to the environment. What we're observing here could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies communication, but only if we can maintain the natural conditions. Chief Ranger Wilson, who had been watching the bear's reaction to Noah with undisguised amazement, nodded slowly. I agree. Everyone not directly involved with this research needs to leave the area immediately. He turned to the wildlife officer. Jake, I understand your concerns, but I'm invoking my authority as Chief Ranger. No relocation efforts without my direct approval, understood? The wildlife officer looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded reluctantly. 48 hours, then we reassess the situation. As the unwelcome visitors began to depart, Dr. Chen approached Layla at the doorway. I'm sorry about this. I had no idea word would leak out so quickly. It's not your fault, she said, adjusting Noah in her arms. The baby was still watching the bears, who had relaxed once the vehicles started leaving. But what happens now? If people know about Noah's connection to the bears, now we work faster, Doctor. Chen said grimly, we need to understand this phenomenon before outside pressures complicate everything. Once the scientific community and the media fully realize what's happening here, It will be difficult to maintain the natural conditions necessary for observation. Back inside the research station, Zoe had been busy. Multiple screens displayed data she had collected: Noah's biometric readings, spectrograms of the bear's vocalizations, and timestamps correlating the two. "I think I found something," she said excitedly as they rejoined her. "Look at these patterns in Noah's brain activity when Sierra made this specific vocalization." She played a recording of a soft huffing sound. "And here's Noah's response." A second recording played a baby's coo that, to the untrained ear, sounded ordinary enough. "What am I looking at?" Finn asked, peering at the complex displays. "Frequency matching," Zoe explained. Noah's vocalization mimics key frequency components of Sierra's call, not perfectly, but with surprising accuracy for a human infant. And look at the neural activity that precedes his vocalization. She pointed to a colorful brain scan. "This pattern is typically associated with language processing in adults." Dr. Chen studied the data, his expression growing more animated. "Zoe, this is remarkable. It suggests Noah may actually be attempting to respond to specific bear vocalizations, not just making random baby sounds." "But how could he possibly know how to do that?" Lila asked, looking down at her son, who had finally begun to show signs of sleepiness. "That's the million-dollar question," Dr. Chen replied. "It could be an innate ability that most humans lose as they develop language. It could be something unique to Noah, or it could be something else entirely." Finn rubbed his tired eyes. "So, what do we do now?" "We continue observing and documenting, Doctor," Chen said. "But given the new time constraints, we may need to be more proactive. Tomorrow, I'd like to try some structured interaction scenarios, with your permission, of course, and with all appropriate safety measures in place." Leela and Finn exchanged uncertain glances. The situation was evolving so quickly that it was hard to know what the right decision was. On one hand, their protective instincts made them wary of deliberately placing Noah in any situation involving wild bears. On the other hand, the connection already existed, and understanding it seemed increasingly important. "Let's talk about it in the morning," Lila finally said. "Right now, Noah needs sleep, and honestly, so do we." As they returned to their room, Noah already drifting off in Lila's arms, Finn paused at the window for one last look outside. The clearing was empty of vehicles now, but at the edge of the forest, 3 shapes remained visible in the moonlight. The bears had not left. They were settling in for the night, maintaining their protective vigil around the cabin where Noah slept. Finn felt a strange mixture of fear and wonder. Whatever was happening between his son and these wild creatures was both beautiful and unsettling. It suggested possibilities that went far beyond anything he had ever imagined when thinking about his child's future. As he turned away from the window, a new thought occurred to him, one that would keep him awake long after Lila and Noah had fallen asleep. If this connection between Noah and the bears became widely known, what would it mean for their family? For Noah's life? Would he become a research subject, a curiosity, a phenomenon to be studied and documented? Or could this unusual gift somehow be protected, nurtured in a way that respected both Noah's humanity and the wild nature of the bears? These questions had no easy answers, but Finn knew one thing with absolute certainty. Their lives had changed forever the moment Noah had thrown his musical keys to save a drowning bear cub. They were now part of something larger than themselves, a mystery that connected human and animal worlds in ways science was only beginning to understand. And as the first light of dawn began to creep over the forest, Finn made a silent promise to his sleeping son. Whatever this journey held, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Noah's gift, if that's what it was would not become a burden. Somehow, they would find a way to honor this extraordinary connection while protecting the normal, happy childhood every child deserved. Little did he know that the events of the coming day would test that promise in ways he could never have anticipated, as the mystery of Noah's bond with the bears deepened, and new players entered the increasingly complex situation, some with motivations far less pure than scientific discovery or parental protection.